Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. PORSPR is my Twitter handle, and Ryan Holmes is RHOLM22. Ryan, how you doing today?
Doing good. Beautiful day. It's about 65, sun shining. Get the wind and the cold out of here. Beautiful day in Southern California.
No question about that. So let's we have a lot to go over. The coaching carousel. I kind of wanted to revisit the rules of engagement because I'm seeing a lot of people who are just hire him now. And I'm like, well, there's no reason to. Because we'll let the process go through. And then you got Max Crosby's the new general manager of the Raiders, Max Crosby. You also have a bunch of stuff going on where people have questions about who's in the room picking the GM and the head coach. So I just want to say one thing real quick about Jim Harbaugh and his candidacy. I don't think Jim Harbaugh is going to be the Raiders head coach. I don't think he's in the. I think the Raiders have an outside chance. I don't think they really have him on the board. But two things can be true, Raider Nation. Like, a lot of Raider fans don't want Jim Harbaugh, but you could not want Jim Harbaugh and then he could still be a good coach. Like, a lot of people are like trying to rip down Harbaugh's accomplishments as a head coach, and like whether it's college or pro, and it just like I really feel like we have to like pump the brakes on that part of it, because then we get to this like really weird, unintelligent conversation about football. Like, you don't want Harbaugh, that's fine. You want AP, that's great. But like, let's not try to make Jim Harbaugh into a bad football coach, because he's not.
No, Jim Harbaugh is a great football coach. Do I think is the betting favorite to be the Raiders coach right now? No, I don't. I think Antonio Pierce will be the Raiders head coach when the dust settles. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. A lot of people are like, well, he rubs people the wrong way. Well, look at his history. That was one place. That was San Francisco, where they went to 3 NFC title games and went to a Super Bowl, and he didn't get along with Trent Baalke. Everyone knows the stories that were saw there. But that doesn't mean for the rest of his life at every other stop that has to be true. He's been at Michigan for 9 years.
Yes.
Let's not act like he's been there for 2 or 3 years and he's trying to run away from something. And part of me thinks that he's going to be back at Michigan, because I think Stephen Ross is going to do everything he can in his power to keep him at Michigan. And if he has to go to $150 million, I think they probably will. By all reports, there's at least at $125 million. I think the Chargers would be the front runner if he did come to the NFL. I've heard he's been house hunting down here in LA. Obviously, his first trip, now that we're a week removed from the national title game, there's a lot of reports he's with the Chargers today. Like, the first place he's going is to the Chargers to look at it. Obviously, they have the quarterback situation figured out for the most part, more than any of these other job openings. So it makes a lot of sense for him to go somewhere, at least to be the front runner. Do I think he ends up in Vegas for an interview? At this point, I would say probably 50-50. I think if he likes everything he hears today in Los Angeles with the Chargers and from the Spanos family, there's a high likelihood that if he does leave Michigan, it would be to the Chargers. My guess right now is he's going to be either back at Michigan or with the Chargers come next year.
Yeah, and then, so I just want to put that out there, because I know a lot of people are just going crazy about that part of it. As far as like what the Raiders have to do to hire a new head coach and a GM, they have fulfilled, as far as we know, the GM part of it, correct? As far as with Trey Brown and Kate Klein, whatever.
Terrence Gray. And then the female executive with the Broncos.
The Broncos. So they have that done. So now they could go forward, and I think the finalists we think are Dodds and Kelly. As far as that goes, we on this program probably like the combination of, if you do get AP, have Dodds there. I'm not sure if Dodds would want to take the job if he's not going to be able to pick the head coach. But I mean, those two guys seem like they're going to be the two finalists. What are your thoughts about those two guys head to head?
Yeah, I do think the two finalists is going to come down to Champ Kelly or Ed Dodds. It might be announced before people start listening to this, whether that's later today or tomorrow. But having said that, I don't think it's ever been, if it's Dodds, it's Harbaugh. So if Harbaugh's going to the Chargers, they're not getting Dodds. I think Dodds went in for, this is the second time in an interview. He wasn't just coming in to interview. He wants this job.
Yes.
He got into the league as a Raider. He grew up a Raiders fan. I found video of an interview where he talked about that growing up in South Texas as a Raiders fan, having worked for Al Davis, and how he kind of jokes with some current members of the organization that, they say they're Raiders employees, but they're not real Raiders employees because they don't know Al Davis and work for Al Davis. So
I like that.
For me, it's now or never. If they want Ed Dodds, they have to do it now. There won't be a third opportunity. I would find it hard to believe if 2, 3, 4 years from now the Raiders are in this situation again and they want to go interview him. He's probably going to say no. Like, I've been there, I've done it twice. You've passed me up twice. He's been very selective on interviews he's wanted to take in the past, and the fact that he keeps interviewing for the Raiders. I did see another interview. I want to say Graphic Raider, give him a shout out. I'm pretty sure it was his podcast. If it wasn't, I'm wrong. But he interviewed Stuart Schweigert was on the show, and Stuart was texting with Ed Dowds during the show, and Ed was saying how he thought it was great and how he wants to work for the Raiders and he really wants this job. So if the Raiders want him, I think, all things being equal, if you look at their resumes, where they've come from, the organizations they've been with, the winning that happened under their watch, whether they were in charge or not, if they're part of the organization, I would lean towards Dodge. I think the Colts have put together really good rosters. They just haven't figured out that last piece of the quarterback, but they've been consistently competitive. They've hit on a lot of their draft picks. His track record in Seattle is a scout. Growing up in that system around those guys and the Legion of Boom and the players that they put on the field would lead me to lean that way. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, well, just hire one of them as the president of football operations, the other one as the GM. That's basically the same position, just worded differently. They do the same thing. So Champ Kelly's not going to stay as GM if they hire Ed Dodds above him. Whoever is going to be in that role wants to have the power over the roster and be the guy that has final say. I could see Ed Dodds coming over and doing that, and maybe Champ stays as the assistant GM under him if nothing else were to come Champ's way as far as job offers. But I find it very unrealistic to think that they're both going to come in, they're both going to be hunky-dory, because one of those two guys is going to want to have the ultimate control of the roster. Dodds is not leaving a situation where he doesn't have control of the roster to work for a team where he doesn't have control of the roster. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's, he has to make an executive decision. And then maybe I'm thinking if AP is the choice, and if you want Ed Dodds to come over and you say maybe they're different, they have different timelines as far as their contract goes. So if AP does not work out, then he can go out there and hire whatever coach he would want later on. But we'll see. We'll see as far as that, because I think they did say that. I think Adam Schefter, one of the insiders, said that Dodds is interviewing with the Chargers on Wednesday or something like that this
Chargers
week.
and Panthers this week.
Chargers and Panthers this week. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. Like I said, we've been talking about that same candidate for a long time on this show. We would love to have Ed Dodds be the general manager of the Raiders.
I would add this. Could they coexist? Could Dodds come in and hire AP? Sure. And if I was Dodds, I wouldn't mind that setup but I would let Mark Davis know up front, if you hire me, I will keep Antonio Pierce. But if it doesn't work out, I get to hire the next coach. I kind of like, kind of the split there. Like, there isn't a current relationship, so there's no buddy thing. So like Dodds could be the GM and AP could be the coach, and then if it doesn't work out on the coaching front 2, 3, 4 years down the line, then Dodds would stay and hire the next coach. He wouldn't redo this over again. The same could be true with Champ Kelly. I would venture to bet if Champ Kelly gets the job, it's 99.9% that Antonio Pierce will be the coach. But then what do you do if it doesn't work out? Are they a package deal again? And I like Champ Kelly. If he gets the job, I'll support Champ Kelly 100%. Personally, my opinion, I think Ed Dodds is the better candidate. Not that Champ Kelly's not a good candidate. I would preferably go that route, but I'll support whoever they are.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, they both have a lot of experience behind the scenes doing all the stuff in the front office. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's all depends on who he wants to hire, and I'm not sure if you can make everybody happy in this situation. It's 2 positions and 3 people, so I'm not sure if that's going to be. That's gonna be something that's gonna work out for the Raiders as far as keeping all 3 guys. Max Crosby, let it be known on his podcast. Let it be known. At first, I think a lot of people off the rip said, "Hey, it's not Max Crosby's place to do all this and say all this." And then on his podcast, he kind of gave you the other perspective of saying, "Hey, I've been here. If AP's not higher than my 5th coach in 5 years, that's crazy." What are your thoughts about it when you heard about Max Crosby doing it? And then I'll kind of chime in with my stuff.
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is the 5th coach in 4 years. I'm so over that conversation with offensive coordinators, head coaches, whatever. Interim coaches within the same season, in my opinion, don't count. He's been through 2 coaching changes. Because John Gruden's situation happened in the middle of the season, we don't get to say it's been 4 coaches. That's how I view it. He's been through 2 coaching searches, 2 coaching staffs. So this would, in my opinion, would be his 3rd. I think, while I kind of agree with Max, I don't think he should have taken it public. I don't think him or whoever his reputation was should have reached out to national media members and blown up people's phones at 5 a.m. on Friday or Saturday, whenever that was. I have no problem with him going to Mark Davis directly and telling Mark Davis that, but to take it national and basically throw your organization, who's trying to do this the right way by hiring the head coach, by hiring the GM first, and trying to let the GM have input on the head coach, and just basically trying to derail that process because you're fighting for the guy you want. And having said that, I haven't posted this on Twitter. I've been meaning to, but I can't remember a situation over the last 10, 15, 20 years where an interim coach, the new players on that team didn't want that guy to get the job, whether it was, Steve Wilkes in Carolina or Rich Bisaccia. You never hear players come out and say, "I don't want the guy that took over for the guy we didn't like." So to me, and that's nothing personal against Antonio Pierce, who again I hope gets this job and I want to get this job. But now all the pressure's on the locker room. You can't win 6 games next year. You can't win 8 games next year. This team has to go to the playoffs. If you're going to stand up and pound your chest and derail the whole search process for a GM and a head coach because you want Antonio Pierce and you want to take it national and threaten for a trade, then you need to go win. And I get where Max is coming from. That guy plays in every game. He had no business playing in the last 4 or 5 games this season, and he did it because he wants to be a Raider, and this is what his life is: go out and play football and compete for 17 games. And that's why we love Max Crosby. He wants to be a leader on this team. He is the leader on this team in the clubhouse or in the locker room. I just don't like how he went about it. I agree with what he said. I just don't like how he went about it.
Yeah, and I think my sentiments is the same exactly. I think there is a little bit of a jealousy for the National Basketball Association with some of the NFL players, where they can pull those games, they can pull those stuff if they want to. The NFL players really can't do that. Maybe a quarterback could, maybe a Tom Brady could, or whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to just the organization is really. I'm sure Mark Davis, who basically took their words, saw what was going on with the team with Josh McDaniels, and fired Josh McDaniels because of what was going on with the players. He gave them that kind of leeway. I think that if they have a certain way they're going in the coaching search, he might have an inkling of stuff like that. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe he thought it was going to be Vrabel. Maybe he thought it was going to be a whole different guy. That's why he didn't. We came forward and want everybody to know that. But the whole threatening the whole organization. Like the Raiders are probably in a position where I think AP is going to be the head coach, and instead of him having to be able to walk into the locker room with a kind of that joyful like, yes, we hired him. Now it's like 11. You don't get 11 wins, cousin. Like it's a bad look for the team, bad look for the organization, bad look for everybody involved as far as that goes. I mean, the players, he put a lot of pressure on that coach coming up when that was really didn't have to be the case going into the season.
Didn't have to be the case at all. Antonio Pierce, if Matt Crosby didn't say a word publicly, was probably still going to be the head coach. So he didn't put himself in a good position. He didn't put Antonio Pierce in a good position, because now they start losing games next year. Everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah, well, Mark Davis just gave in to the players and hired who they wanted.
Yes, 100%.
This is not going to end well unless they win. And it probably wasn't anyways, but they just put pressure on themselves that they didn't have to. And like I said, Max should have kept that behind closed doors. This is the same. You got to remember, and I love Max Crosby, but we have to be honest here. Max Crosby was very, very upset and vocal about that meeting with Josh McDaniels prior to the Lions game getting out into the media. So what he was upset for earlier this season that cost Josh McDaniels his job, now he's doing the same thing, basically showing his report by going public with stuff that can be kept internal. Having said that, Antonio Pierce, I don't know if you saw the clip today, but I guess he was at an MLK Pride event. I want to say it was in Las Vegas, and he kind of let it slip about what a dream it is. He was wearing his Raiders starter jacket today even, and made a comment about when it's official, and started making it sound like he thinks he's getting this job. And I think too, I think this whole process, a lot of people don't read enough. Even the process is out there. If you just Google it, if you just get on Twitter, you don't know how many people have sent me messages that just have no idea what they're talking about and what you need to do to hire a head coach. And even today, that are out there doing it as well. I don't think the players know. I think the players, and the timing of that 5:18 a.m. or whenever it was report by Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter the other morning wasn't a coincidence that it was the same morning that Antonio Pierce was interviewing virtually with the Tennessee Titans. There was a reason for it to be released that day at that time to get out ahead of that interview. I don't think the players in the locker room even understand what the process is and what they have to do, and they can't just go hire this guy today because he's interviewing virtually with another team. I laid out how they could hire Antonio Pierce prior to January 22nd. I had a lot of people tell me I was completely wrong. I was right. And one of the candidates that I mentioned that they could interview to get this done quickly, surprisingly, is going to be in the building tomorrow. Mark Davis can make this happen the middle of this week if he really wants to. We'll see if he does. But everyone is just getting so up in arms, and all the Raiders are doing is following the rules.
Yeah, and like you'll be the first, and they'll be the first people to call the Raiders, a bad organization if they mess up on a rule and lose a pick. So let's not be silly. Let it go through the process, and I'm sure the Raiders were gonna, the Raiders will be fine. And let's say, like I said, if we're interviewing Leslie Frazier, AP's the coach. Like let's relax. Leslie Frazier is not going to be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Like we all know that. Let's have a little common sense as far as that goes.
I would add, there is value in this interview with Leslie Frazier. He's a good defensive coordinator, and if anything were to happen to Patrick Graham, if another team poached him,
100%, this
could be setting him up for a potential defensive coordinator job under Antonio Pierce, or even a position if they lose their secondary coach. Let's say Jason Simmons leaves. Leslie Frazier was a cornerback on the 1985 Bears and was a DB during his playing days. So maybe they add him to the staff in one role or another. Mark Davis, all he has to do is go down the hall, find Marvin Lewis in Antonio Pierce's office, or go call David Shaw on his cell phone, say, hey, meet me at PF Chang's, and they can hire Antonio Pierce Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah. Although I believe Marvin Lewis is in the Polynesian Bowl right now in Hawaii. I did see him. I did see him with Dylan Raiola.
They could have already interviewed him, and we just don't know it.
Hey, we don't know. That's true. You never know. Speaking of interviewing, there's a lot made about who's in the room making these decisions. Now, I'm not sure and with other football teams how many people are in the room. I'm not sure if it's just one or two. I know Raider fans don't even. I couldn't pick Ken Herlock out of a lineup, but nobody wants him in the room for sure. But anything we can make of the people who are in that room, including former Patriot great Richard Seymour.
Yeah, I do like the fact that it's more than one or two people because by all accounts last year it was essentially Ken Herrock and Mark Davis. Having said that, I do like that the president, that Sandra, I'm slipping on her first name, Morgan,
Yeah.
is in the room. She's on the business side. She needs to be in the room and have some input. Tom Delaney is a salary cap guy. Does he need to be in the room? I don't know how much pull Tom Delaney has. Richard Seymour's interesting because he's never really been tied to the Raiders organization in some sort of front office type role. So this is the first we're hearing of him being in there. He's been out of the league for quite some time now. Is he in touch with the coaching candidates that are hot right now around the league, or is this more going back into some of the older retread coaches? Is he going to fight for Bill Belichick? We don't know. We don't know what Richard Seymour's going to do. Do I like having a former player that was a Hall of Famer in the room? Sure, to have a voice on schemes and coaches and leaders and what he's looking for. And obviously, he played under Belichick, who many believe is the greatest of all time. Yeah, it's a good voice to have in there. I would like to have a little bit more in the room as far as
Player
on the
personnel.
scouting or player personnel side. And granted, they don't have a GM. They're hiring a GM, so they can't do that. But maybe someone else in that room. And I've heard a lot of people saying, "Well, the Raiders can't interview head coaches because they don't have a GM," but they could do virtual interviews. A number of teams have both openings and have done both. If this isn't AP and this isn't Jim Harbaugh, I think the Raiders are kind of behind the eight ball now as far as some of the other candidates are concerned because they haven't shown any interest in them up into this point. But
Yeah.
if it's AP and it's been AP all the way, then it's totally shaping up to be that. It's just an interesting situation. We'll see. Hopefully the GM's in place. I would assume the GM will be in the meeting with Leslie Frazier come tomorrow. And then
Yeah.
what we should know in the next 12 to 24 hours who the Raiders general manager is.
Yeah, I was trying to find the complete list, but I mean, you pretty much ran everything down. So I don't think there's any need to go through every single name that's on that list as far as that goes. The GM candidates, we went over that. We talked about it's basically two people. They have they interviewed one head coaching candidate already. They could easily slip another one in there really quickly with like you mentioned with Shaw and with Shaw or Marvin Lewis. I had a question. The question I have for you is this: is like, should there be a little bit of an addendum? Because this is the question that I got a lot. Kind of the same question over and over again in on the text line. If you're hiring somebody who is going to be part of the Rooney Rule, should you have to go through the process of interviewing other minority candidates?
I would say yes. I think the process is in place not only to help the person you're going to hire, but it's to get the minority candidates, as many of them as you can, in front of the decision makers, whether that helps them for that particular job or not, because now their name's in the news cycle. And now, hey, a team, let's say the Falcons have an opening and they interview 4, 5, 6 minority candidates. Other teams are the openings to be like, well, who's that guy? I want to talk to him too.
Yeah.
It just helps get these people in front of the decision makers that can help them down the line. It gets their name in the news cycle, in the hiring cycle. It may help them find another job, maybe as a college coach, or maybe they do get the job. But I do think it should be equal. If you have to go through the rule for a non-minority coach, then I believe it should be there as well. I don't think it hurts anyone at the end of the day.
Yep.
I do think I do find it odd that if this does end up being Champ Kelly getting announced in the next day or two in AP by the end of the week, that the whole idea of the Raiders are going to go through this grand extensive search and they were going to turn over all these rocks, and it turns out they basically interviewed the same GM candidates they interviewed 2 years ago, give or take 2 or 3 names. And if they do go AP and they just run through a couple of minority candidates without doing a real head coach search, that the whole thing was just lip service. And that basically they should have just done this. They should have just interviewed two guys quickly, hired Champ, interviewed two guys non minority coaches that are in the NFL, and just done this right away, and just kind of got away from what they're doing, is kind of just dragging this out. Like, if
Yeah.
they're going to go through an extensive search like they said, then I would fully expect them to interview other head coaching candidates come next week when they can on January 22nd, and then hear about AP getting the job towards the end of the month. So the
Yeah.
timing of when they announce the AP hiring is really going to let us know if this search was really extensive or not. I'm just curious to see when they're going to do this, because
Yeah.
again, Mark Davis has said one thing, and if they end up just going Champ and AP before actually interviewing anyone that currently works in the league, any current coordinators, then it wasn't an extensive search.
I would say that the thing you brought up a good point, because I didn't even think about the fact that, hey, like Leslie Frazier isn't just a nobody interview, because it could be if something ever happened to Patrick Graham. There are a bunch of openings. People are even saying that, after this game today, if the Steelers lose, that Tomlin might hang it up. Like, I mean, there's a lot of smoke behind that too as well. And we have a lot of coaches who have been long tenured for a long time, who have left the football, or been kind of forced out of their position, like Pete Carroll. So, getting a guy like that to add to the staff would be another guy who has head coaching experience that might be able to help AP as well. So that would be a good thing as well. And I think if you're a young coach, say you're what's the guy's name, Thomas Brown of the
Panthers,
of the Panthers, hasn't had a good year offensively, but like maybe it was really, he was in a situation where like his philosophy might work somewhere else. Get the name out, all stuff like that. At the end of the day, it's really not hurting anybody. So for me, 100%, like just keep it the way it's going. Unfortunately, like if you left it the other way, then people would just hire the guy like Josh McCown would have a job already. I mean, he was like, seriously. I mean, I mean, people like that would have a job. So keep it the way it is. It's not hurting anybody. Like we don't need everything in the microwave. Sometimes you gotta cook something in the oven. Let it cook for a long time, and then as long as that meal comes out the right way, you're good to go as far as that goes.
and
Go
I
ahead.
would also add, if the Rooney Rule didn't exist, Champ Kelly probably wouldn't be with the Raiders right now. Like, they would have
They will
probably
not.
just hired Dave Ziegler, and then
Yep.
he wouldn't be there. So they went through the interview process. By all accounts, he was a finalist. Was he the top finalist? That's going to debate. There's been a couple of different leaks. One, you have one section of media saying it was Dodds. You have one section saying it was Kelly. We don't know which one it was, but had they not been required to do that, then maybe they never even interviewed Champ Kelly. So it helped him get the assistant GM job that turned into the interim. It may turn into the full-time GM job, because they had to go through that process.
You spoke about pressure, the pressure that kind of Max put on AP. If Dodds goes somewhere, and especially in the division with Harbaugh, let's just be like, let's really think about that for a second, and like make sure, like, if he has a wishy-washy draft, and the Chargers are killing it every year, then that could be something to watch for as well, because I think eventually he's going to just not hold out for the Raider job anymore and end up going somewhere else. The rumor is, and it came from the Colin Cowherd show, Colin Cowherd is very tied into USC. And it could be a couple of things. It could be Cliff Kingsbury is a realistic candidate for the OC job with the Raiders, or it could be him knowing, some coaches, and he goes to dinner with coach. Say what you want about Colin Cowherd, he goes to dinner with coaches all the time. That's his thing. They go out and eat steak dinners all the time. But he knows Cliff Kingsbury very well. So would he be a good candidate for the Raiders OC if AP is the head coach? I would say yes. I would say I think Ryan tweeted out, I would say yes. You're never going to find a perfect candidate. Somebody's going to find something to bitch about as far as that goes. But he fits the bill in my mind of being a former head coach, collegiate and pro, took a step back this year to be to help out with Lincoln Riley. Has coached some really good quarterbacks as well, and also been in a playoff game as well too. So, what are your thoughts about possibly adding Cliff Kingsbury to a potential Antonio Pierce regime in with Vegas?
Oh, yeah, again, I don't think the timing of that was a coincidence either. After the GM is basically going to be
100%.
announced, AP smiling on his MLK parade show today, basically
Yes,
making
he
it seem like
was.
he's going to be the coach.
Yeah.
I would say Colin Cowherd is very, very tied into the USC football program.
100%.
He didn't just say that to say that. So
Yeah.
I would be excited because in this respect, my number one requirement, and this is me personally again, I want someone with the former NFL head coaching experience that can help Antonio Pierce. Setting up an offseason, setting up OTAs, setting up strength programs. This is stuff AP's never done. He's never been in charge of this at any level. Just having that person to bounce it off. And then this guy was an offensive play caller in the National Football League. This guy was a head coach in college, so he can relate to the younger guys. This guy coached some of the best quarterbacks in college over the last 10 years. He coached Patrick Mahomes. He got a Heisman Trophy out of Baker Mayfield. He got a Heisman Trophy out of Kyler Murray. He went to the NFL with Kyler Murray. He went to a playoff game with the Arizona Cardinals, who've been downright dreadful before him and after him, a little bit other than the Kurt Warner years where they went to the Super Bowl with Larry Fitzgerald. I've seen people push back, well, he's soft, he's finesse, he's this, he's that. Yeah, is it a power, two-back, 13 personnel, we're going to smash the ball down your face offense? No, he's going to run a spread offense, but they do run the football. That's the misconception here. The first thing I did was just go right to the rankings. I think they finished 8th, 6th, and 10th, and maybe 14th his 4 years. I could be wrong, but I think 3 of the 4 were in the top 10 or 14. 2 were in the top 10. They run the football in terms of yards per game. Now, with some of that Kyler Murray running around and scrambling, yeah, it is. But if you want the Raiders to go out and get this young, dynamic, mobile quarterback that can run around and create plays, you kind of want this kind of play caller involved too that's been around and coached those kind of guys before. You don't want this guy coaching Aiden O'Connell. You want this guy coaching that mobile guy, like I said, that runs around, whether that's Justin Fields or Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams or whoever you think or want to be the quarterback. And he's been around the game. This guy was calling plays as of 2 years ago. And he spent the offseason, whether you like Lincoln Riley or not, he's considered one of the better offensive minds in college football. So it's not like he was in Thailand the whole time. Like, he was still around the game. He was still around some of the players. So
Yes.
Is it a great hire? I don't know if it's a great hire. Is it a good hire? Probably. Is it solid? For sure. It's a solid hire. The Raiders could do a lot worse. Now you're setting yourself up for if he does come in and the Raiders kill it and make the playoffs for a year or two, he's gone. He's going to go take a head coaching job at a college, or another NFL team is going to have interest in him. That's a good thing to have. I know people are scared of that, but that means the Raiders probably went to the playoffs 1 or 2 times and won a playoff game or two. So you can't be scared of your coaches that have success and lose them. Then that's up to the head coach of AP to go out and hire someone else. And in a perfect world, you're grooming a quarterback coach behind the OC who 2 or 3 years from now can take over, that knows the system, that can stay with the same group of players. And you build this internally like the good organizations do. And you're not always chasing all these coordinators all over the league and putting in all these new systems.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think when Kenyon Drake was there, he averaged over 4 yards a carry. And when James Conner was there his first year with him, he had 15 rushing touchdowns. And they play 16 or 17 games. That's pretty good. It may not be like the Michigan running game, with all those, but as long as your running back is getting positive yards and you can use that for play action and everything like that, it does make sense as far as that goes. So you're gonna be able, no matter who the coordinator is, you're going to be, people are gonna have a little bit of a problem with it. So that's just the way it is. But like, you can punch. He's a coordinator, so you can punch holes in everything. But I do think it would be a solid hire. I'm not going to tell you that he is, Mike Shanahan or whatever. I'm just saying his will be a solid, good hire, and he checks a lot of the boxes for the Raiders. Anything else about the Raiders? I'm trying to get this show out before the Raiders make a
Gotta hurt.
Get Chip Kelly or get somebody else in fold here.
No, I think, and again, there is a process to hiring an offense coordinator. Antonio Pierce gets the Raiders job. He can't just hire Cliff Kingsbury. They have to interview. I believe with a coordinator, it's one. I could be wrong. I have to brush up on my coordinator roles, but they're out there. It's called Google, Twitter. You can find it. Tom Pelissero tweeted it out. I retweeted it a couple of days ago. They will have to interview at least one, maybe two minority candidates as well for the offensive coordinator. You also have to do that for quarterback coach, I believe, at this point. So those positions are required to satisfy Rooney Rule type interviews. You can't just go hire guys. Yeah. Offensive line coach, you saw Cameron Basilla leave. That is not part of the Rooney Rule requirements. So they could interview an O-line coach and hire him the next day.
No question about it. So yeah, there's actual. If you want to go even further, I guess there's a picture of, and I'll post it. I'll post it so you guys can see it, because it's a picture of Richard Seymour, Antonio Pierce, and Champ Kelly at the MLK the celebration in Vegas. So hey, like for what it's worth, that could be the new Raider brass. Maybe. I do
see the picture now. I'm looking at it right now.
So, but in front of a Raiders symbol. So that kind of we'll see.
Just listen to the end. It's like a 2-minute clip. You can find it. Antonio Pierce was basically making it known. If you read between the tea leaves, he's going to be the head coach.
Yeah. So so all this drama and all this vitriol, all this, I gotta say this. I gotta screenshot this bad boy. But yeah. So if it is, it is. And like at the end of the day, we just want to see the Raiders win, just like everybody else, and really be competitive. They were competitive during his stint in the interim. Now they gotta win. They gotta win games.
They need to win.
They need to win. No question about it. All right, Raider Nation, take care. Ryan, you have a wonderful day, and I'll try to get this out as quick as possible.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.